Welcome. I am Rebecca Wilson. I'm a psychologist. I work within the Extraordinary Kids Clinic at Denver, Colorado at Children's Hospital. And I want to talk a little bit about how research can benefit you. But sorry, better? Can I move it over here? How's that? Oh my goodness. I like to move. Okay, so I want to talk about how research can benefit you. But I want to start with what I think is pretty obvious from this room. Research has already benefited you. You're here today because of a great deal of research that's been done. So first benefit, a conference. But I also want to invite you on an adventure this weekend. This is a weekend where I hope you learn many things that will change the way you see these conditions. And I also want to invite you to be courageous. Just being here requires courage. Curiosity requires courage. I'm a psychologist, like I said. I think research is a good thing, to quote Martha Stewart. I'm trained to work with evidence-based models and to rely on research to guide us. Sorry, guys. There we go. The panelists that are here today are some of the most distinguished experts from around the world, not only in these conditions, but in other genetic conditions. And they know a few things. Not only do I want you to listen to them, but I want you to ask questions. So, research is important because it provides knowledge and progresses our understanding of diseases and disorders. It's one of our best and fast and safest ways to find treatments that work. But now, right, you guys are all thinking, but it takes a lot of time. How will it benefit your kid? How will you actually see the person you're here to learn more about their condition? How will it help them? And in this day, when we can take out our phones at a stoplight, in some cases, and order something on Amazon, right? And it's at your door, exactly what you ordered, and it might fit. Well, what about research? What about waiting years to get evidence-based guidance? But we want it to take time. It should take time. We should use really evidence to figure out what's the best guidance. So, I'm going to tell you a story about Leo. I want to use him as an example. This is Leo Kanner. He wrote the first paper about autism. And it's definitely true that autism is a factor in some of our conditions. But I'm not talking about Leo because of that autism is always present in these conditions. But I want to tell you a story. X and Y conditions have had an enormous impact on my life. But before I came to the X and Y world, I was very involved in developmental disabilities. The interesting thing is, when I was in graduate school, autism was very rare, no one was interested in it, and not many people were going into the field. Leo Kanner wrote his first paper about autism in 1949. 70 years later, this is what we know about the prevalence of autism. Here I am, like when it was about a prevalence of 1 in 1,000. It is now considered 1 in 58. Right. Wow. This came about because of research. We understand autism, we understand its impact, we understand how to treat it, we understand how to intervene. Not because of Google, as it turns out. Google wasn't invented when we started understanding autism. So views from my shoes, folks. We are much better off for being able to identify, understand, and treat autism, and the people with autism are better off for it. So again, this is just one example of the impact of research. When I was a psychology intern, I was assigned to a large group of patients to provide treatment. Now, understand, I came from a neurophysiology lab with really fancy machines, and we were looking at the caudate of the hippocampus and long-term potentiation. Yeah, okay. And I was skeptical about this kind of outcome-based approach of observing patients, but my supervisor thought it was very important. She called it the Denver model because, after all, we were in Denver, and it was a model that looked at treatment for kids using parent support. Now, you guys go, all you parents here, you go, duh. You kind of need us. Well, I wasn't sure what I thought about this model. And it came to be called Early Start Denver model, which is now known as a very broadly respected approach based on applied behavior analysis. And recent studies have shown that it really has long-term gains for patients involved in it. My story, 2 weeks ago, I was seeing a family in the Extraordinary Kids Clinic, and I recommended the family read this book. They're from a rural community with very few supports. Recommended they read the book. This mom emailed me last week. Right, Susan? And said, thank you for recommending Early Start Denver model. It has already made a significant difference in my son. He's making eye contact. He's interacting with me. $49,000 publications. When Leo Kanner wrote his paper in 1949, in 1952 there were 4 peer-reviewed journals. Look what research can do. Now, for those of you that really like visual images, you'll say, hey, that graph looks a lot like the graph of the autism graph. That's right. That's what research does. It helps us understand the condition, and it helps us guide other research that expands our understanding of the condition. So we're a long way from my friend Leo. Okay, another story. I like stories. I was working as a new psychologist, doing a lot of assessments, and let me tell you a little secret. Don't tell the primary investigators here, but when you're a psychologist and you're doing a lot of assessments, it's really nice to be offered to be put on a research study because it means a few less reports. So I was invited to join this research study, and I was researching the parents and grandparents of the kids I was working with. And I noticed something. They shook. They literally shook. And I thought, man, we're really giving them too much caffeine. And honestly, a grateful family had given us a cappuccino maker, and we were serving them all espresso in the waiting room. So that's what I thought it was. But I was fortunate enough to work with this very rigorous, very thoughtful group of researchers. And when I went to them to say, I'm noticing this shaking, they said, you know what, we have 2. This came to be known as FAXTAS. Where is it? There we go. And it is now known, Fragile X, by the way, is the most common inherited cause of intellectual disability. Don't be confused by the X. There's not an association with our conditions. But FAXTAS is a deteriorating neurological condition, and because of this work, we now understand its course, we understand Fragile X better, and there are actually treatments for the condition. Again, Fragile X, just an example. Took a lot of time to research and understand. You can tell 1943, first description. 26 years later, they found the marker for Fragile X. This takes a lot of time, right? And there are big gaps and periods of slow development. 38 years of publications in Fragile X. And you can see how research builds on itself. There's a ripple effect here, and this is important to understand. There's not one-off publications. The publications build on one another. These publications reflect the underlying grant funding, the advocacy, the kind of work that AXYS is doing today to foster the interest and the research to make it proceed. It improves clinical awareness and community advocacy, and Fragile X has benefited from this. So let's go back to X and Y conditions. That skyline in the background on this slide, that's autism. That's the publications, the peer-reviewed journals related to autism. The dark purple at the bottom, that's Fragile X. Now you're looking at that slide going, oh, she's made a mistake. I don't see, wait, I don't see XXY. XXY is the blue, all the way down at the bottom. Trisomy X, XYY, you can't see it. That's where we are today. In a few moments, these researchers are going to come up and they're going to talk about research. We have a long ways to go. A little bit of research can have a huge impact. This is a picture of a study involving 36 participants, and those 36 participants turned into 132,000 accesses and 92 other citations of this single paper. That's what one study can do with 36 participants. Yeah, wow. So let's look at what else research can do. That's this is a picture of the connection between two neurons. It's called a synapse. The red in this picture are the sites, getting back to Fragile X for just a second, that are disrupted in the Fragile X mutation. Again, not related to XY conditions. Research has helped us identify and study these specific pathways and really has helped guide direct intervention for this condition. This is complex. You're not expected to understand this. However, there will be a test. And this is what we know about the pathways in X and Y conditions. We know they have neurons. We know they have synapses. We don't know anything else. Now, there are a lot of researchers here who are beginning this work and have really made some important advances that we think will move our field forward. But relatively speaking, right? Yeah. These are exciting times. We have an opportunity to fill this picture so that 10 years from now, we're going to put this slide up, right? And we're going to understand pathways, and we're going to understand the synapse for these conditions. Okay, true confession time. When you found out about the condition you're here for, how many of you used Google? Right. If you Google autism, 200 million results come up. If you Google Fragile X, 13 million. You know what the next one's going to be? And do we know the quality of the information in this? So this is XXY. This is XYY. This is trisomy X. Right? And more worrisome is the quality of the information that is embedded in those results. Dr. Google, not such a good doctor. No other animal is capable of self-study. Research is our unique way to understand ourselves. Systematic, controlled, well-designed research makes a difference. What can it do for you? Well, let me begin with one of the most important benefits, and that is access to the professionals that are here today that may be difficult to see otherwise. But it also gives you a way to contribute to our field in a way no one else can. Advancing knowledge is our most important and powerful gift to ourselves, to our children, and to future generations. We don't know what we're going to find. I can tell you, honestly, no way when I was an intern, when I was doing that very tedious data collection that I wasn't really sure about, that it would last week benefit my patient directly and immediately. No way did I know that working with people that had a little bit of a tremor would lead to really vast understanding of a major condition. The ripple effect is significant. I ask you today to listen to these researchers, become conversant in your condition, have courage to ask questions. That's important. It helps shape the research. The ripple effect is significant. Thanks.